Today I want to show off three prompting techniques that bring Claude's coding level from a intern level to about a junior engineer level of coding. And I use all of these heavily when I'm using Claude to program. So the first one is a base prompt of best practices. This is an accumulation of just good practices for Claude to use. And it's really important for two reasons that you do this. The first motivation is just that it follows better rules for writing code. Um, and then the second motivation is it puts it into a senior engineer, how can I say it? A senior engineer context. This is a really important thing in setting up context for the LLM. And here's the base prompt that I usually use. I'll just break down each part of it. There's about three main sections. So the first part of this base prompt is it tries to tell it, like do thorough thinking, make all the changes that are required, and also like think through bugs when you do things. So this is quite important because it really forces the LLM into a more of a senior engineer mindset and like essentially like it prompts it to put a lot more thought into what it does. The next most important thing is that just making it do much higher quality coding, doing things like not removing features by accident and uh, not taking shortcuts when it writes code is super critical to having Claude perform at more of a junior engineer level. And finally, just don't add logs everywhere and actually fix bugs. This is very important because by default it does this and it writes really crap code. So like, why is this prompt so important? Well, first of all, it just follows the rules well. But secondly, there's a second aspect to it. And this is part of how LLMs work, is that um, LLMs are trained on a huge amount of code. And I'll make this brown. Most of this code is like pretty crap. This is, for example, GitHub, Stack Overflow. These are the main data sources. Sorry, and especially a lot of GitHub diffs is the really Git diffs, huge source. However, most of this code is not that good quality, but a subset of it is really good quality. So I'm going to call this like high quality code, and it's all mixed in with these sources. But there's various things that are associated with high quality code. Um, a good example of this is thinking through like big commits with lots of changes is strongly associated with high quality code. And if you tell it to make big commits with lots of changes, Claude will kind of know that it should be writing code similar to this type of code, and it does much better. Yeah, so that's one technique that's immensely impactful for writing high quality code with Claude. The second technique that I've discovered is a technique called 5 whys. This is a technique that like senior engineers will use a lot, but it really helps Claude write good code as well. And it works like this. So I've got this template here. If I click bug, it says do a 5 whys root cause analysis of why the bug happened, then fix it. And what happens when you do this is there's a few important bits. What it does is it makes Claude use chain of thought. So it will say, reason one, and then reason two, and then reason three. And often it will be able to fix bugs much more in a more sophisticated way and systematic way than if you don't do this, because it's now thought through all of these fixes. And once again, because this is a senior technique, it makes it kind of copy senior level code and it does much better. So that's the second technique. It's really effective for bug fixing. The third technique is how you apply diffs to code and generate diffs. So if you remember back here, most of the data that Claude has is Git diffs in GitHub. It's one of the #1 data sources. And so it's very important that when you're using tools to generate code for Claude, you ask it to generate Git diffs and then apply them. It makes it generate really high quality code. And in fact, here's a template I use. If you've ever used tool calling, you'll know what I'm talking about. So Git diffing with tool calling. This is like a template for tool calling you can use. And how it works is you first of all need to say, what's the summary of the change you want to make? What files you want to edit? What's the text that you're replacing? and what's the text you're going to replace it with. And if you give it this template, it writes really good code, like much better code than if you just ask it for a new file. And in fact, this is what like Cursor uses. This is what Claude Dev uses. It's one of the main techniques. It's generating Git diffs using tool calling. So now I'm just going to put it all into practice. So I've got my whole setup here, and I'm going to first ask it to build something. What I want to do is I want to build an app where there should be a lava lamp like background. So what you're going to see is that hopefully using this system prompts and also using the git diffing structure here, it's going to be able to automatically apply good changes. Okay, that's all right. But I would say it's not done quite what we want. So now I'm going to use the third technique, which is that I want it to do a root cause analysis of why it's not a proper lava lamp appearance, then fix it. And we're going to see it come up with like a step-by-step explanation of where it went wrong, and it will try to implement a systematic fix to make it more lava lampy. One challenge of this prompt is it does make it use a bit more tokens and run a bit more slowly, because it will go for like better edits rather than shortcut fixes. Okay, I mean, I think that's a little bit better. So you can see what it's thought through here. It says what's wrong with it. It doesn't mimic a fluid. It's just using a simple linear gradient. Okay, then it says, well, let's use CSS gradients, which are limited. Um, so then it says this is not the right solution. It says we need to use Canvas API, and it's like a bottom-up rewrite. If we didn't use this prompt, it might have just done a band-aid fix and not really fixed it properly. So that's about all of the main techniques that I've learned that are critical to getting Claude to write good code. I hope this helps you, and I hope it allows you to write much better code and start projects quicker using Claude.